Look, there's this moment in life that most people never actually reach. It's the moment you realize that explaining yourself isn't giving people clarity. It's actually making you weaker. And I'm not saying you're wrong about anything. I'm not saying you lack intelligence. What I'm saying is this: the more you explain yourself, the more you're basically giving other people permission to judge you. And once people think they're allowed to judge you, your power just quietly slips away. Now, Niccolo Machiavelli figured this out 500 years ago. You know, The Prince, right? In that book, he wasn't talking about power as this thing you announce to the world. He was talking about power as something you just embody. He literally watched leaders fall, not because they weren't strong enough, but because they revealed too much. Their reasoning, their doubts, their whole inner world to people who would absolutely use it against them. Think about your own life for a second. How many times have you explained why you made a certain decision, why you said no to something, why you pulled back from a situation, why you've been quiet lately? And here's the thing, every single one of those explanations probably sounded totally reasonable, but somehow you still felt smaller afterwards, right? That's because explanation is almost never really about truth. It's about seeking acceptance. Every time you explain yourself, what you're really saying is, please understand me before you decide who I am. And powerful people, they just don't live like that. Machiavelli noticed something about the most effective princes back then. They moved with this deliberate sense of mystery. Their actions spoke for them, but their reasoning, that stayed hidden. They didn't share their strategies with everyone. They didn't feel the need to justify every move. They definitely didn't apologize for their decisions. And because of this, people feared them, people respected them, and most importantly, nobody could manipulate them. What happens when you stop explaining yourself? Here's what most people don't realize. Most of your explanations aren't coming from logic. They're coming from fear. Fear of being misunderstood, fear of being disliked, fear of being painted as the villain in someone else's version of the story. But here's what nobody tells you early enough, and this is crucial. People don't actually respect explanations. They respect certainty. The more solid you are in your own actions, the less you feel like you need to defend them to anyone. And that's exactly why leaders tend to speak less. That's why those really dominant personalities never rush to clarify themselves. That's why calm people make emotional people so uncomfortable. They move first. They don't sit around asking for permission. They just let all the noise happen around them while they keep moving forward. Machiavelli actually wrote this incredible line: "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." And when you really think about that, he understood something deep. When you over-explain yourself, you're literally handing people a map to all your vulnerabilities. You're showing them exactly where you're afraid. You're showing them exactly how to hurt you if they wanted to. What happens when you stop explaining yourself? Now watch what happens when you actually stop explaining yourself. It's fascinating. At first, people get really uneasy. They'll start asking way more questions. They'll push for details they never cared about before. They'll demand transparency like you owe it to them. And here's the thing, it's not because they actually care about understanding you. It's because your explanation gives them control over you. When you go silent, you take that control away. When you stop explaining, people are forced to just sit with uncertainty, and most people absolutely cannot handle that. So what do? They fill that silence with their own assumptions. And this is the part that reveals everything about people. Strong people will actually respect you more. Weak people will feel threatened. Some people are going to label you arrogant. Others will say you've changed. Let them talk. Because their reaction, that's just proof that your silence actually has weight. Machiavelli understood this perfectly. He knew that the people who constantly need you to explain yourself, those are often the exact people looking to use that information against you later. Over-explanation as self-sabotage. Look, when you over-explain everything, you basically turn your entire life into this open courtroom.
Your boundaries, suddenly negotiable. Your decisions, up for debate. Your self-respect, it becomes a group discussion topic. And without even realizing it's happening, you stop actually leading your life. You start defending it instead. And this is where most people completely lose themselves. They get so obsessed with being understood that they forget about actually being effective. Machiavelli would call this the fatal mistake of the well-meaning prince. You know, the guy who thinks if he just explains himself clearly enough, people will finally see his pure intentions. But in the actual game of power, intentions mean nothing. Only outcomes matter. Dangerous people, they don't defend themselves. They watch first. They decide quietly. They move without making some big announcement about it. No emotional speeches, no long-winded justifications, just action, just results, just this undeniable presence. And the moment you stop explaining yourself, something shifts inside you. You stop chasing approval from people. You stop rehearsing those imaginary conversations in your head at 2 a.m. You stop making yourself smaller just to make other people comfortable. And you realize something that's simple but incredibly powerful. You don't actually need to be understood to be aligned with yourself. Once that really clicks for you, your entire presence changes. You start speaking slower. You choose your words way more carefully. You react less, not because you're numb to everything, but because you've already made your decision internally. Machiavelli had this teaching that a prince should be like a fox and a lion at the same time, cunning and strong. The fox knows when to reveal things and when to keep them hidden. The lion knows when to roar and when to just stand there. But most people, they're neither of those things. They're more like anxious rabbits, constantly explaining themselves to every predator that questions their path. And this is exactly why silence feels so dangerous to people. Because it can't be manipulated, it can't be rushed, it can't be easily attacked. Silence forces the truth to rise to the surface. When you stop filling every awkward void with justification, people have to actually confront their own discomfort with you. And when you get comfortable with being misunderstood, you gain something that's actually pretty rare. Freedom. Real freedom. Because the need to be understood is the last chain that keeps most people stuck in place. The shift from defended to dangerous. So if you're ready to stop over-explaining yourself and start moving with actual quiet confidence, hit that subscribe button. Because here's what Machiavelli knew that most people never figure out. Power isn't loud. Power isn't this desperate thing. Real power is quiet certainty. It's strategic restraint. It's being able to move through opposition without stopping to explain itself to it. The moment you stop explaining yourself, that's the moment you become dangerous. Not because you're being cruel or dishonest about anything, but because you've stopped giving people the exact tools they need to control you. You've become Machiavellian in the truest sense of the word, strategic sovereignty. You understand that the person who doesn't feel the need to explain themselves, that person becomes powerful. The person who doesn't constantly defend themselves, that person becomes untouchable. So I want you to ask yourself something. How much of your energy right now is being spent explaining yourself to people who've already made up their minds about you? How much of your actual power are you just giving away for free just to feel understood? Machiavelli's deepest insight was this: the prince who tries to please everyone ends up pleasing literally no one. But the prince who moves with silent conviction, who acts without apologizing for it, that prince becomes legendary. So the choice is completely yours. You can keep explaining yourself into total irrelevance, or you can step into the silence and just let your presence do all the talking. Because the moment you stop explaining yourself, that's the exact moment you reclaim your power.